Hello, everyone, and I welcome you all to today's exclusive video interview on cybersecurity's next playbook from browser exploits to AI platform defense. I'm your host, Khushi, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you with us. And I am honored to welcome our distinguished guest speaker for today's session, Mr. Kunal Ruvala, Senior Vice President and General Manager, India at Palo Alto Networks. It's such a pleasure having you, Kunal, here with me today.
Thank you very much, Kushi. It's a pleasure being here as well. And thank you. It's great to see you again.
Likewise. And at about his profile at Palo Alto Networks, he's leading the company's second largest global R&D hub. He oversees India-based product teams, drives engineering and product strategy across the network security portfolio, and manages cross-functional operations across the center. With a focus on advancing next-gen cybersecurity, he also plays a key role in accelerating innovation, expanding strategic growth, and collaborating closely with customers and partners to address their most critical security challenges. He also brings deep leadership experience from major global technology organizations, having led large-scale product and engineering teams at Honeywell, Dell, RSS Security, and EMC. His areas of expertise span enterprise storage, data management, data protection, data security, and industrial technologies. And now about the session. Let's learn how Palo Alto Networks is shaping the future with advanced AI capabilities, platformization, and a stronger security foundation, especially as Agentic AI transforms both opportunity and attack surface. As global enterprises expand their digital footprint, secure browser environments, and AI-driven protections, and skilled cybersecurity talent, particularly from innovation hubs like the India Development Center, they are becoming mission critical. So in today's conversation, we will explore how Palo Alto's latest AI innovations, platform approach, and focus on securing emerging vectors like browsers are redefining modern cybersecurity for a rapidly evolving threat landscape. And our guest speaker today will share the real world insights on navigating agentic AI responsibly and strengthening browser security. So, now without further ado, I would like to begin. So, to begin with, Kunal, and set the context for today's discussion, as you see that AI automation and the evolving threat surfaces are reshaping cybersecurity faster than ever. So, from your viewpoint, what fundamental shifts are you seeing in how these modern security challenges are emerging across today's tech landscape?
So first of all, Kushi, thank you once again very much for having me at this session. Thank you for the warm introduction. I truly do appreciate it. As you said, there's a lot that's transforming overall in our lives at the moment. There's a fair amount of digitization across everything that we see. There is AI that is ubiquitous right now. You're starting to see AI in kinds of applications across the broad spectrum of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And as a result of that, you're also seeing a shift in the security landscape where there are threats that are becoming faster paced. There are challenges that are emerging that are more complex. There are adversaries that are becoming more advanced in the kinds of attacks that they're implementing. And as a result, for us as the cybersecurity industry to stay ahead of it, to help protect our way of life and to provide solutions that helps our customers be secure and live our lives the way we want to is a critical imperative for all of us.
Yes, Kunal. And just like you said that the fast pace at which we are also evolving with this tech landscape. So moving forward, I would like to ask you that as you see that agentic AI is bringing this massive automation opportunities, but also those new risks. So where do you see the most critical vulnerabilities emerging?
Look, while this might sound a little cliche, I think one of the things that all of us have heard of or have seen and experienced personally is that the rate at which AI adoption is happening is incredible. It's probably the fastest tech wave that we've seen in all of our lives. As AI technology is evolving, one personal viewpoint that I have is that given the fact that it has become accessible to consumers as quickly as it has, and the positive impact that it has demonstrated to all of us in our lives, in our experiences, in how we interact with systems and what we get exposure to, I feel that the pace of innovation in AI is going to continue accelerating. And that in itself is an incredible opportunity for us, but it also poses a few threats and risks that we need to take care of. So let's step back a little bit about your question around agentic AI and how that sort of is the opportunity, but also poses new risks. If we were to step back just a little bit, not too long ago, a lot of the applications that we were used to and are still used to were built with a three-tier sort of architectural model. You had some sort of an interface where users, you and me, interacted with the systems, the front end. There was some sort of a middleware or some sort of a business logic layer that took care of the domain and had the application. And then you had the data warehouses where the data was stored, and through this data, the decisions were being made and the outcomes were being driven by that application or by that program.
Yeah.
Given that three-tier architecture and there were risks with that, we figured out how to provide cybersecurity for those architectures. While we were doing that, the cloud became a reality a few years ago. And when you think about the cloud, whether it be development of applications in the cloud, development or deployment of the applications in the cloud, and then delivering the services through the cloud have just become commonplace. In this as well, the architectures evolved. What happened with the architectures? You had more virtualization, you had more containerization, you had more microservices. And these were capabilities that became part of what the new application and the new architecture for the applications was being, or how it was being defined. Next, we saw the wave of AI and the growth of AI applications that were coming in. And then once again, over there, it wasn't a simple solution where you took an LLM, you plugged it into your existing applications, and it was all good. The entire AI stack started to evolve. The entire AI stack started to change. And as a result, there were different attack vectors that started to emerge. You had the AI supply chain, which is evolving. There are configurations with all things AI, LLMs, models, etc., that you need to take care of. And quite simply put, if you have something that's misconfigured or not configured deeply enough and thought through well enough, it can be a vector for an attack, or it can be an exposure that can result in challenges for your environment. In addition to this, you've had you've had things where with the AI applications that have been built, there needs to be access to more data. And the more data that these AI applications have access to, the more information they can bring back to you, or more coherent their responses will be for your use cases. Oftentimes, this data that was being accessed by these AI applications was not just internal data, but was also sensitive data, highly sensitive data. And that posed a different set of risks to the enterprises and because of these applications. So then to net it out, essentially, while these applications and architectures were evolving, so were the attack surfaces. Now let's add Agentic AI. And as soon as you think about Agentic AI, all of what I've said in terms of how the architectures have evolved applies. But in addition to that, there is memory. You basically have to have recency of the decisions that have been made that are then used to provide more accurate decisions for the next set of actions that these agents are carrying out. Yeah. Agents also draw upon a number of tools that they're integrating with. And in order to have that, and in order to have better outcomes over a longer period of time, they need to learn from these systems, and they need to move and change and operate these tools or these systems as well. So these integrations provide yet another form of an attack surface, which is becoming a challenge. So while there are incredible sort of advantages and positives of what the technology is providing to us, the attack surface is clearly expanding. And there are challenges that we see, or there's a new set of risks that are emerging as a result of these attacks, or of this attack surface expansion that we've seen. Let's talk about a few of these things. If you think about prompt injection, right? Attackers are essentially using misguided or misleading instructions into these systems and are getting these Gen AI systems to respond to something that they're not designed to respond to, or in unexpected ways. There are some rules, or there are certain policies that might have been defined, but based on the prompt injection, attackers are able to have the systems respond to something outside of those guardrails, and that's a challenge. Let's think about tool misuse. We spoke about Agentic AI. Agentic AI has an integration with a large set of tools that will help drive the automation across the entire system. If there are these well-crafted attacks that are injected, they can exploit vulnerabilities through these integrations, through these tools, potentially resulting in outcomes that you didn't want the agents to be taking, or it was unauthorized execution of things that the agents performed, which is not what the systems were intended for. Let me talk about a third one, goal manipulation. So a lot of these agents are built with a certain specific goal that they have in mind. But through these exploits, through what the attackers are able to do, they make the agents feel like their goal has been altered. And as a result, they carry out actions or they carry out steps that they were not intended to take. Remote code execution. We've seen remote code execution as a challenge in even traditional systems. But as you think about agentic AI systems, they are inherently running code and executing code to take action on the rest of the system, integrating with different parts of the overall technology solutions. And that's where, once again, remote code execution becomes a big challenge in today's agentic AI sort of environment. And maybe the last thing that I'll call out is when you have agents and when you have a large number of agents, these agents are deployed with an intention that they're going to operate within a certain bound. They're going to have a certain level of access to compute or a certain level of access to storage or the services that are available. Now, if you overload these agents and if you figure out how these agents consume more than what they're supposed to be consuming, the impact is to the other users within the same environment. So with these kinds of risks that are emerging, with the rate at which agentic AI systems are developing, the attack surface is broader, the risks are broader, and we have to find ways in which we solve these challenges upfront. We solve these challenges at the time of design and building these systems. And that's where I think traditional security approaches alone are not going to be sufficient. I think they're very essential, but they alone are not going to be sufficient. You need to embed AI-specific security practices and safeguards very early in your development cycle. In fact, quite frankly, even before the first line of code is written, you need to think about some of these AI-specific guardrails, security safeguards, and then put them into the models, into your data pipeline, into how the entire system integrates with the other applications that it works with, where it automates all of the interactions. You need to build this, and that's I think the way forward.
Yes, Kunal, and that's an absolutely great perspective and insights that we have just uncovered from your expertise and skill set, I have to say. So now moving forth, as you see that browser exploits are a thing now. So with browsers, they have effectively become the new OS layer. So what is that one recent exploit patterns which highlight the urgency of securing them, in your opinion?
Yeah, once again, thanks for the question, right? When you say the browsers have become the new OS layer, let's personalize it a little bit. Right? And if you just step back a little bit and think about how much time each one of us spends in the browser, I think it's probably an obvious answer from each and every one of us. We spend majority of our time in the browser. I'll give you a very personal example. Today, we use the Google suite of products at work. And when you're using the Google suite of products, whether it be Gmail or it be any of the Google Sheets, or it be the slides that you might be creating, all of this is done with the browser as your primary interface. Palo Alto research shows that workers spend over 85% of their time using browsers to get their work. 85% of their time. Now, you might think that this is unique to certain users, certain roles, certain functions, but quite frankly, the amount of time we're spending in browsers is increasing, and it's increasing significantly at all points. If you think about just the developers, a lot of the developer tools are also now accessible through browsers. So even developers are spending a lot of their time in browsers. So are managers, and so are workers that are automating tasks across the organization. There is much more time that we're spending in browsers. What we've also seen is that through Palo Alto research, we've learned that 95% of organizations, almost every organization, it's 95% of organizations have reported a security incident within the last year, which was originating from the browser. And that is a challenge, right? So while we're spending more time in the browser, there are more attacks that are coming up through the browser. Let me give you two specific examples or data points on how that sort of plays out. If you think about phishing, each and every one of us, I'm fairly certain, has experienced some form of phishing or has at least observed some form of phishing attack in our lives. Now, these phishing attacks look much more real now than they were a few years ago. A few years ago, it was very easy to distinguish between this is real, this isn't real. This looks like it's someone trying to get more information out of me. And you would be able to very clearly say, okay, I'm not going to look at this and I'm going to shut down. However, phishing attacks are becoming more real. They look more real. And as a result, there are more people that are exposed to it. What we've seen, based once again on research that was commissioned by Palo Alto Networks, that 94% of organizations have experienced a phishing attack. So it is real and it continues to happen. Let's talk a little bit about how we all try to become more productive, how we try to drive more automation through all of our work that we do. We get assistance. So when we're using the browser, for example, we have plugins that we would deploy that will help us with correcting our grammar. Or there'll be plugins that we deploy that will help us with automating some of the functions or workflows that we routinely use. And there is a Stanford University research study report that shows that between July of 2020 and Feb of 2023, there were 280 million users, Google Chrome users, that downloaded browser extensions that contained some form of malicious software, that had some malware in it. So once again, right, our time in the browsers is increasing. The number of attacks that are happening through the browser are also increasing. And one of the major challenges that a lot of organizations have is that visibility is a blind spot. A lot of the traffic that goes through the browser is encrypted traffic, which makes it much harder to provide these security controls. In fact, once again, Palo Alto Networks notes, or we've seen through our research, that about 64% of all of the traffic is encrypted traffic, and that makes it hard to provide some of the security controls. If you provide some of these security controls within the browser is closest to what the user sees. So it is before things are encrypted, and as a result, some of these controls can be provided in a way that can help solve these challenges and can help protect us against these malicious actors. Now, if you think about agentic browsers, they're emerging as well, right? You've heard and you've probably seen this in the news. The agentic browsers that are automating a lot of tasks, that are coming up and are doing a lot of things. And what do most organizations do? A lot of organizations, and when I talk to customers and when I've had conversations with security practitioners, the first step that a lot of organizations are taking is to say, let me block these agentic browsers. I'm not sure if I can differentiate whether these steps are being performed by a human or are being performed by AI. And I'm not certain whether these steps that are being performed by AI are okay or are not okay. I'm worried that there could be certain web-based threats. I'm worried that there could be phishing campaigns. I'm worried that there could be some malicious extensions. There's data exfiltration that might be happening. And a lot of organizations, as a result, as a first step, are saying, let me just block it and let me figure it out. Now, the challenge with that is you're leaving a lot of incredible capabilities on the table and not leveraging the best. And we at Palo Alto Networks, over the last couple of years, have built the Prisma browser. And through the Prisma browser, we provide capabilities and security that helps you browse safely and browse bravely. We provide a secure browser workspace. So there are things that are contained within a bubble or within the workspace and protected as a result. We've hardened the browser so that we have natively integrated some of the security services into the browser directly. And as a result, there's a better security posture, and it gives you better security outcomes. We have complete controls over what capabilities or functionalities within the browser can be enabled or disabled. And as a result, we can control that for the end users within the enterprise or within the organization. And finally, browser extensions. We have the ability to control what browser extensions can be used, are being used, should not be used. And there are risk scores or assessments that can be made on these browser extensions. So the net of it is, I fundamentally do believe that more and more of our time will be spent in browsers. As more of our time is spent in browsers, there is a challenge with the risks that are emerging from browsers. But by using something like the Prisma browser from Palo Alto Networks, it allows you to browse bravely, and it allows you to put the controls in place that secures your enterprise.
That's a great roadmap, actually, Kunal, on how these browser exploits can actually be saved and addressed at the same time. Because many people are even unaware that this is happening around. But that's a great roadmap on which you have just mentioned your insights and perspectives on.
And
which makes sense. Yeah,
and that truly is one of the challenges, right? Where when people aren't aware that some of these challenges can even impact you, providing the safeguards and solutions through the use of technology that takes away some of the elements of the unknown from the end users is some of the best practices that we as the security industry need to continue aspiring towards. It's never enough to say technology alone will solve the problem. You have to have users and we have to have people be aware of what some of the cyber threats are. But providing that robust layer of technology as best as possible is our responsibility. And that's what we hold ourselves accountable for.
Yeah. Definitely, yes. So now transitioning to the next aspect, that as you see that developers are increasingly, they build browser-based workflows now. So in your opinion, what do you think are those security considerations they should prioritize early in this design process?
Yeah, and once again, I'll connect this back to a couple of comments I made a little while ago. You talked about how do you prioritize or what considerations, I think you said what considerations do you have that you prioritize early in the process. I think security and building a strong, robust, secure product is something that needs to be embedded into the entire lifecycle of product development. It's not something that happens as an afterthought. It needs to happen at the time of conceptualizing the product. It needs to happen at the time of defining the requirements of what you want the system to be able to do. You need to define what the outcomes are. You need to define what the interactions with the user will be. It needs to be defined in terms of security at the time of coding. Quite frankly, even before the first line of code is written, you need to have the structure in place on how secure coding will be done, testing, deployment, observability. So it's truly in the entire life cycle of the product that you need to have a security mindset as you're building these things, as you're building new technology. Now, more and more of the applications and developers and the ecosystem is moving towards browser-based workflows or automation through browsers. And there are a few things that I would suggest we keep in mind as an industry and we keep in mind as developers. For instance, if you think about modern applications, they depend heavily on dynamic client-side code. What does that mean? There are third-party scripts that are written, or there are things that are being done with service integrations. And if we don't have all of this considered at the architecture stage, if we start considering what it means to have client-side code being a part of the overall solution and have left it as an afterthought, there will be challenges on that code which will expose the entire system. So building that robustness, building that security over that client-side code, for example, over the third-party integrations that you have, over any of the services that you integrate with, is a key part of what needs to get done to be able to start building a secure system. You need to design and you need to secure data handling upfront. So you've got to define what your data policies are. You've got to define how, when there's data that's coming into the system, there's validation of the inputs that are coming into the system. It's not poisoning the system. It's not sidetracking the system. It's not hijacking the system. You've got to make sure that there's validation of what's happening with this data. You've got to figure out how you're encoding the data that's going out of the systems and what you're doing with that encoded data. You need to have logic on where some of this data resides, right? Once again, a lot of these will be browser-based workflows. So does the data reside in the browser? Does it need to go into the backend? How is it secured? How is it then taken care of in terms of disposal? All of that needs to be factored in while building the design of the system, not as a retrofit or not as an afterthought. You will not be able to get there if you do it. I think the third thing that I will call out is identity management or access management, privileged access management, session management are critical. A lot of people don't realize the importance of how you need to tightly control the level of access that you're providing to data, to attributes, to the users, to services within the system, to APIs. All of this needs to be designed and architected while you're thinking about your entire construct of what these systems will be. There's a fourth one that I think is really important. Like most well-run organizations, you need to drive security testing. And security testing can be of various types. There's security testing, there's static application security testing, there's dynamic testing, there's interactive testing. You need to build all of this as early in the cycle as possible. And it needs to be a part of every single release, every single capability that you're building. That's a key. And the last thing I would say is, while you build all of these security considerations or capabilities into your product, or you design them upfront, you have to be able to make the products more observable, verifiable. You have to make these products resilient, which means that in case there is a security threat or there is a vulnerability or there's an exploit, what are some of the things that you're doing to minimize the impact? What are some of the things that you're doing so that you can have an audit trail, so that you can take remedial actions? These are factors that just absolutely need to be built in as developers think about building these new workflows and new agentic AI applications and rely more and more on browser-based technology that is developed.
That's actually a great, an absolute worthy of thought, because nowadays when everyone is moving so evolving with this, fast moving tech landscape, it also becomes important to, keep considering all those small advances that they need to address, and accordingly reskill all the plan that is making them go ahead. And absolutely, with these insights that you've shared, this is one question that everyone was looking for, that what are those skills or mindsets that developers should cultivate if they want to contribute meaningfully to cybersecurity innovation at scale, in your opinion?
Absolutely. Khushi, I'll tie this back to a comment that you just made, right? While there are big picture plans and strategies that you can put in place, we're only as secure as our weakest link. And we've got to make sure that you've taken care of the detail. You've taken care of small aspects of product development. You've taken care of small things that you need to build, whether it be in the coding phase, development, the testing phase, deploy phase. But having that depth, detail, that visibility, that orientation towards every small aspect of the entire lifecycle of the product is a key part of what is going to keep us secure. And that sort of dovetails into your question on what are some of the things that, from a mindset point of view, I try to keep in mind, and I think that developers should keep in mind. But security by design is important, right? And we spent some time talking about it, but you have to think about securing by design. This also includes, what are some of the interactions that the users will have with the system? What is the UX? Is it easy enough? Are there controls in place that help you turn up and turn down certain levers to build in that security that is required for those interactions? But you need to think about it from a design thinking point of view as well. I fundamentally believe that more and more systems are going to continue integrating with each other. With the agentic AI workflows that are emerging, with and not just within the IT space, in OT as well. Right? As more and more of these technologies are starting to get digitized, they're getting connected. With the agentic AI workflows, they're spreading out across these this large integration across all systems. Design thinking is important. When I say design thinking, when you build a design or when you build a system, thinking about how something in one part of the system is going to impact something that may appear to be unrelated is an important aspect of what we need to think about as developers. How do you think about the holistic solution? And in this holistic solution, what are the capabilities that you're building in so that you don't have risks in one part of the solution have an impact on another part? And how you're factoring that entire end-to-end together is a key part of what developers need to keep. Let me talk about a second thing. I think, we spoke about how quickly technology is evolving. I think the pace of technology evolution is only going to increase. It is not going to slow down. And in this environment, curiosity and proactive threat intelligence or threat modeling and thinking about what these threats could mean is really critical. Without having that curiosity, without having that mindset of saying, let me figure out what these new challenges could be and how I solve these challenges, I don't think we're going to be able to build those robust systems. So having that mindset is crucial. The third thing I'll call out is you've got to have a zero trust philosophy. And sometimes zero trust philosophy, zero trust thinking is often overused as a term. But in simple terms, the way I think about it, you trust nothing and you inspect every sort of transaction or you inspect everything that you do. And when you build that mindset and you build that mindset while designing the system, the overall posture of that system, the overall security that's provided through that system increases. And that's exactly what we want. And you've got to take care of privileged access. You've got to take care of continuous verification. You've got to make sure that you are segmenting different parts of the system so that where information is not needed to be interchanged, it isn't. And these are these are parts of the philosophy of what zero trust thinking brings in. Right? So I think that's the other part that I would encourage people to keep in mind as you're thinking about building new systems, enhancing your systems, building the capabilities. Cybersecurity also is not about one individual. It's not about just the developers or the coders. I can continue writing my code, but if I don't work closely enough with everyone in the ecosystem, the product managers, the UX designers, the support engineers, the security professionals, the operations teams, I'm not going to be able to solve a holistic problem, right? So having that cross-functional orientation of what the roles are and having that security across everything that we do is critical. And I'll call out one last thing that from a mindset point of view is really important for me. I've for a long time, I've been of the belief that policy normally lags technology advances by a few years. So what you will normally see is technology evolves. And as technology evolves, there is the positive of the technology, and then there are the side effects of any technology that you're talking about that start becoming obvious. And when that becomes obvious, policymakers step in and say, let's control some of this evolution and put policies in place. We spoke about how fast the technology is evolving. Policy is evolving as quickly as well. And as policy evolves, these policies are becoming more difficult to understand because they're geographically defined. In some cases, they're defined based on domains. In some cases, they're defined based on industries. And understanding all of these policies, having an awareness of how these policies are shaping up and what we need to consider while designing these systems is a critical part of what we need to keep in mind as we're building these outcomes. So those are some of the things. I mean, there are many other sort of areas that we all need to evolve in, but these are some of the things that are top of mind when you think about what mindset should we cultivate to have a really good security outcome from our new technology, from the new technology that we're building.
Right, Kunal, and you've really made us jump into a pool of knowledge and resources from your, wisdom and expertise that you just shared with us. Because knowing this from you and on the perspective of the cybersecurity's next playbook is something which is definitely a great aspect and perspective to move forth with. And before we wrap up, I would like to ask you that if you would like to share one message for the developer community on preparing for the next era of AI-driven cybersecurity, then what would it be?
It's hard to say one message, and I think hopefully some of the conversation we had covered a part of what the evolution is and what we need to keep in mind. Maybe I'll summarize it in two if I can, if I may. And the way I'd say is number one is. Security cannot be an afterthought. You must architect security and it cannot be patched. So security, first and foremost, as part of your mindset and how you're building anything is critical. So I would keep that in mind at all points in time. It must be architected, not patched. It is not going to work if it's a retrofit. If it's an afterthought, it is always going to be more challenging. So that's number one. And the second thing I'll say is embrace the change. The pace of change is incredible. We are at a point in our lives where, with the way technology is evolving, just the possibilities of what can be done with technology is absolutely incredible. And we, as the developer community, if we put technology to good use, we can truly transform lives all over the world. So, embracing change, learning how these technologies are evolving, so that we can leverage the advances in technology while protecting against the bad actors is a critical part of what will make us successful. So those are the two things that I would leave you with.
And those are really great, Kunal, I have to say. So now, before we finally wrap up, outside of work in tech, what's that one thing that keeps you creatively inspired or helps you stay grounded in such a fast-moving industry?
Look, I'm just inspired by the people around. I think especially when you look at some of the young talent that is around us, whether it be even as early as schools or it be just the exposure that some of the younger generation has and the capabilities that they have and what they can do, I think it's truly inspiring. I've got a very India-centric view as well that I would like to throw in over here. I think India as a country has aspirations that are endless. We've got an incredible opportunity ahead of us. And with these minds that are there, with the young minds that we have, with the aspiration that we have as a country, with the demographic dividend that works in our favor, it's just inspiring to be in this space and be excited about where we are. And I couldn't have hoped for more than just being in this industry and hopefully giving a little back as we build some great products.
Right, Kunal, and it's always great to always inculcate the right balance of of all those small things that we are gaining and inculcating from people around us, because there's one thing always that inspires us. So maintaining that right balance in the right amounts can also make us evolve in ourselves in a great way. So that's really a great perspective to look at.
Absolutely.
So yes. So now with that, we finally wrap up this exclusive interview on cybersecurity's next playbook, from browser exploits to AI platform defense. A heartfelt thank you to you, Kunal, for joining us today and sharing such actionable insights, real-world examples, and such a forward-looking view of how security is evolving in this age of AI. From the rising threat of browser-based attacks to the shift toward unified AI-driven platform defenses, this conversation illuminated how organizations can strengthen resilience, reduce complexity, and stay ahead of the modern threat landscape.
Thank you very much, Khushi. Once again, thank you for having me, and it was great having this conversation. So appreciate it.
Likewise, Kunal. It was an absolute pleasure hosting you. And this is your host, Khushi, signing off. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day ahead. Stay tuned for more such conversations from TechGig. Until next time, take care and keep innovating.